Hey everybody, Jamie Starr here for the New World News Network, and today we're going to be doing the first installment in a video series in which I'm going to be calling the Hour of Hate, and it is essentially going to be me hate watching some of my most hated YouTube shows, whether it be the Young Turks. I'll probably do one of Sam Harris clips, just various other people I think are full of shit, and just kind of watching it, poking fun at it. So I figured we might as well start with the motherlode, the Young Turks, and according to them, this is the year of revolution. So let's check out this is the intro video on their YouTube page.
We are actually the longest running daily stream on the planet.
Later tonight, we start a revolution. Yes, another one.
I ask leave of the Senate to continue my remarks.
Too strong!
You're not answering the question. Answer the question.
No one is above the law, and that includes the President of the United States of America.
Go, engage, fire.
Congrats to the Young Turks. They actually won a Streamy Award tonight.
We'd like to thank Donald Trump, obviously.
We just crossed 7.6 billion views.
Revolution won't be televised.
Hello, Internet.
I am the least anti-Semitic person that you've ever seen.
I think there's blame on both sides.
Oh, these politicians, they're the worst.
They had these beautiful soft towels.
It's just so wrong.
They took your wealth and redistributed it to them.
The government's robbing you, and they're distracting you with fucking nonsense.
Fake news, the enemy of the people.
The government's robbing you, says, coming from the people who think the government should rob you and give you healthcare, education, and everything. Like, why don't they just not take your money, and why don't you spend your money the way you want? Oh, yeah. See, that's one of the things I've always hated about liberalism, like, especially the idea of them taking away money for retirement. Like, it's essentially like the government just has this attitude, like, we can't trust you to do this for yourself, so we need to take the money. Oh, but don't mind us spending it and investing it in the meantime. Like, I remember talking to my mom about that, because my mom worked for New York State, and she's always like, you need to work on the books, your retirement, whatever, while I'm watching, like, Chicago and everywhere else be like, we don't have money for the pensions. And I'm like, if they're just taking your money and saving it and setting it aside for you, like, you shouldn't have this issue. And she's like, oh, well, New York, they invested it, that's why they'll have the money. I said, oh, so they gambled with your money. No, they invested it. Yeah, but you generally don't have a guaranteed return on investments, so it's just ridiculous. It's like taking your life savings and giving it to someone to go to a casino with. But anyway.
Nobody knew that healthcare could be so complicated.
I can't speak as dumb as he understands.
The market will be destroyed by this plan, and 45 million people will be left without insurance.
They will be met with fire and fury.
We just launched 59 missiles.
MSNBC shows the bombs taking off, and Al Jazeera shows you when they land.
The profiling and the Muslim bans have begun.
Today, my father and brother await deportation.
Horrific act of violence in Charlottesville. I want you to see what hate looks like in America.
What a sick country we live in.
It's time to get up and fight back.
Giant protests against Donald Trump.
Women's marches take over more.
I also hate how they have, like, realistically, Donald Trump is the most anti-war, pacifist president we have had in my lifetime. Only 30 some odd years, but still, most pacifist anti-war president. He drops one bomb in Syria, and you see how they present it, like as if he's Obama dropping bombs every day. Ridiculous. And then, I want you to see the hate in the country. One douchebag plows into a crowd of people and someone died over it, and somehow that's what, a window into America at large? No, like, you have to be so low IQ in order to buy into some of this nonsense.
More than 500 cities across the United States.
Immigrants throughout the United States who protest. I don't think they're peasants. I actually think that they enrich this country with their culture.
I don't want a resistance. I want a revolution.
History is not on your side.
Your fundamental principle is flawed.
This is outrageous. It's unethical. It's bad government. And frankly, it's fucking, corruption.
We work together as a community and we stand up for each other.
A total
That's the other thing that really bothers. Of course they would put that clip in there. I bet you Anna chose that clip because, as you know, Steven Crowder jokes about when she says "fuck," you know, it's real. She's serious. Like, it's like level of profanity and outrage equals justification or higher ground of some sort.
solar eclipse. Oh my God.
Climate change is my #1 issue, and to be able to help amplify the message and research of these workers is like a dream come true.
Colin Kaepernick chose to sit during the national anthem to protest police violence against African Americans. This has sparked a new movement.
More and more women are sharing their stories of sexual assault.
It's happening right in front of our...
Or like Asia Argento having the stories shared of them sexually assaulting people, right?
As the culture is shifting.
We have to speak up ourselves and we have to create movements ourselves.
To see it unfolding in real time as women stand up together.
How about a movement off of a bridge? Just saying.
They're collectively and go no more.
So many women came out of that women's march and said, I'm running for office.
You want to talk about the revolution? Here it is. Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
TYT.
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 Young Turks.
You do have the power to change people. You do. I hope one day we can all learn to live together in a decent way and not let oftentimes the media and the corrupt established system tear us apart.
Ugh. So, intro video, the revolution's coming. Hopefully it's like not the Armenian genocide revolution, right? So anyway, I thought, hold on, let me just let the dog out real quick. So I thought, for a start, we should just go over, I believe Atheism is Unstoppable put this together, the regressive agenda, which is pretty much found in everything on the Young Turks. It is, first off, fuck white people. White people are racist. Fuck America. Blame America and its military for every problem on earth. Mention Iraq. Defend the Muslims. Create a false equivalence with Christianity and muddy the waters. Fuck the cops. Fuck conservatives and Republicans. Save the blacks. Treat black people as if they are helpless infants who lack agency and can be nothing but victims. Disregard linear time. Blur the past with the present as so to demonize modern people for the actions of those from the distant past. Mention that it's not all. Assert that they are saying it's all and tell them it's not all. Then eject. If someone brings up a problem, pivot to talking about a non-problem. The other thing they do is, I believe the term they've created for this is whataboutism, where if you're talking about one issue, they'll say, but what about, if you're talking about this, well, why didn't you mention this? Like, you know, it's like, it's this weird debate tactic. If someone, I see it in people online even, like, it pissed me off recently. I posted a video about that, school shooter school, basically, that they had set up by the border, and I just put a comment saying, yay, open borders, and then one of these morons I'm friends with on Facebook chimes in and says, well, you know, white people are still the most school shooters. Yeah, in a majority white country, I would expect them to be the majority of any stat, really. So what does that have to do with anything? Nothing. If someone presents a problem to you, mention another problem, because two wrongs make a who cares. Virtue signal whenever conceivably possible. This is how the world's supposed to know how awesome you are unless you announce it. Oh, how is the world supposed to know how awesome you are unless you announce it to them repeatedly? Fight against bullies. If there are none, pretend that there are. This will help you process your resentment towards all those mean kids who bullied you. Fight for the Ewoks, not the stormtroopers. Alright, so I figured just because it's easy, low-hanging fruit, we are going to start with Hassan, who, this guy is just fucking funny looking. It's like a goddamn monkey.
Back in March, I saw a documentary slated to be released on the plight of white farmers in South Africa called Farmlands. And the documentary was high quality, it was action-packed, it looked like a Vice field piece, but this time, the subject was white genocide, so you know it's full of shit. And this film was part of the international white nationalist propaganda.
Now, is it... But like, first off, there's a lot of bullshit that just came out of his mouth. So first off, because there's a concept of white people being genocide, that's laughable. Even though I guess, you know, you could call the Holocaust a white genocide, couldn't you? Jews are white, right? I mean, kinda. And then he says, white nationalist propaganda effort on the internet. I didn't know Lauren Southern was part of a white nationalist propaganda effort. You gotta love how these guys think, like, that there's some sort of commonality between, like, Richard Spencer and Lauren Southern or something, even though Richard Spencer, if you listen to what he really wants policy-wise, it's right in line with Bernie Sanders. Like, it's socialism. It's the same thing Young Turks are always fighting for. So anyway, sorry about that, guys. Let's get into it.
White nationalist propaganda effort on the internet.
Internationalist white nationalists.
And this film was part of the international white nationalist propaganda effort on the internet, and it took a very controversial issue like land reappropriation in post-apartheid South Africa, which already has extremely high rates of violence and racism, and turned it into agitative propaganda. So naturally, Tucker would take on this cause since, you know, he's the most mainstream representative of white nationalist fascists.
What? It's like you really just want to ask these guys, what is your definition? Like, Tucker Carlson is the mainstream white nationalist? What? How do you even arrive at that conclusion? It's so full of shit. Like, it almost like you just wish someone could go after these guys for slander and libel. Like, it's ridiculous.
President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, has begun seizing land from his own citizens without compensation because they are the wrong skin color.
And now our president is repeating this white nationalist nonsense because he saw it on Tucker Carlson, because that's the world we live in. But let's
The other thing I hate is how, again, talking to their viewers like they're idiots, they think if they can just, if you slap, well, it's white nationalists, that it must therefore be bullshit and there's nothing to it. Like, you notice how he's not, at no point, and I mean, we still have 2 minutes here, but is he going to say what's actually going on? Like, it's supposedly he destroys the myth of it, so let's see if he gets to this.
Facts. First of all, South Africa is the only country with a worse record than the U.S. when it comes to white colonization and racism, since they held on to a system of legalized segregation called apartheid until 1994.
Disregard for linear time. Is that technically this one? Is he just bringing up the past as if that... What does this have to do? What does 1994 have to do with what's happening today and the history of racism? Yeah, whatever. I don't care about history. What's happening now?
As a result of this racist system, more than 70% of the population was crammed into 13% of the shittiest land. And even
Whoa! Did you just call Africa a shithole? Are you saying there's shithole countries? Are you sure? Are you agreeing with Donald Trump?
After the apartheid officially ended, white colonizers still owned 90% of the land, despite making only 10% of the population. And by 2017, 25 years after failed land reform, after the apartheid was over, white people still owned 72% of the land. So when Tucker talks about land seizures, without mentioning the fact that black people previously owned that land, well...
That is literally the definition of racism.
Now, according to Tucker, the South African...
Oh, is this, if someone presents a problem to you, mention another problem because two problems makes a who cares. I feel like he's very quickly kind of going through all of these.
Government trying to bring some sort of justice after centuries of colonization, rapes, violence, and discrimination in a majority black country is the literal definition of racism. It's not the brutal systemic disenfranchisement of black people in their own country. That's just normal stuff. Trying to correct that problem now, that's what really grinds my gears. So
don't you love how he can just affirm that Africa is a country for black people, but I bet you if he asked him, which country is a country for white people, he'd say, oh no, Canada's multicultural. England is multicultural. America is multicultural. But Africa is for black people. Like, the double standards are so stark and just so obvious.
2016, the South African Parliament passed an expropriation bill to nationalize farmland with fair compensation.
And also, it's a, like, this sort of just evil sort of what comes around goes around. Like, oh, well, land was taken from them, so you can't get mad when it's taken back. Two wrongs make a right, somehow.
To white owners. But then, bowing to public pressure and more radical groups in 2017, the parliament passed a constitutional amendment that turned this process into seizures of land without compensation. And uncompensated expropriation has led to serious economic collapses in neighboring Zimbabwe after foreign investors fled the market, which is why this type of forcible uncompensated land seizure is a bad policy. But it's not white genocide. And then the targeted violence against whites idea is also ridiculous, considering that the murder rate in South Africa has declined sharply since the apartheid ended, and even now, white people are much less likely to be murdered. And while accurate figures on this are notoriously difficult to discern,
What? So you just put forth the figures, and then you're like, yeah, but they're kind of bullshit and kind of hard to track, and this and that, but I'm still going to put them forth because they help my argument.
Similar to the United States, one of the most comprehensive studies on the murder rates was conducted in 2009 by the South African police, and it found that whites...
Fuck you, moron. We're talking about something that's going on recently. You're like, yeah, a study in 2009. Is this a disregard for linear time or what? Like, it's just cherry picking and all sorts of other bullshit.
Made up only 1.8% of murder victims, despite making up 8% of the population, whereas blacks made up close to 90% of murder victims. So,
well, you would think so in Africa. Like I was saying earlier, if anyone came to me with a stat in a majority white country that whites were the majority of whatever, I would believe it. So why wouldn't blacks be the majority of murder victims in majority black countries? That just seems to make... That's not some sort of grand revelation. Oh, look at that monkey face. Planet of the Apes, this guy.
Of course, it's a much longer conversation that I can't fully get into, but my point is that you shouldn't be fooled by white nationalist propaganda. But what's also truly terrifying here is the fact that this fascist nonsense can predictably travel all the way up to the president's ears and dictate foreign policy. So if that angers you, please share this video with your friends, and don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, to continue this
I didn't see anything in here where he took an argument from the movie or anything. It's just sort of vague, pointing to things. There's this documentary, Tucker Carlson, President Trump tweets, nothing about what's going on now, a whole bunch of a study from 2009, things about land grab back then, and then they had to try to fix it and correct it. What's happening now was never mentioned. Did I miss something? I'm right? Nothing about what's happening now did he mention to try to disprove this or anything like that. Oh, so you can just, and I bet if you went to him and you said, well, when, white Western Europeans came to America and they took the land from the Native Americans and everything like that, I'm sure he'd call that a genocide, because again, if you're taking someone's resources and just sort of casting them out and stealing their stuff, and I'm sure it eventually leads to starvation and death. Again, these are farmers in Africa taking the farmland. Like, I'm sure he would call it a genocide then, but
Conversation live. Join me on my Twitch at twitch.tv/hostile.
Moron. Alright, let's go to this other one. And I'm pretty sure this one's going to be a mentioning of two. This is one I was saying is going to be whataboutism. Tommy Lawrence shamelessly exploits the death of Molly Tibbetts while ignoring Nina Wilson. Like, because, Hassan's decided what issues everyone has to care about, and this is whataboutism.
Hey, liberals, you want to talk about child separation?
Oh boy.
How about this? 20-year-old college student Molly Tibbetts has been violently and permanently separated from her parents at the hands of an illegal immigrant.
What happened to Molly is an awful tragedy, and I hope justice is served. But there is no justification for the horrifically dehumanizing conditions the Trump administration put all immigrants through way before what happened to Molly happened.
Yeah.
But you weren't concerned when it was your boy Obama doing it, were you? Because that's where the pictures of kids in cages came from. And it's funny because you had everyone saying, this is like Auschwitz, this is like Dachau. And then you had Holocaust survivors saying, that looks like a summer camp. So these are horrible conditions that people who have actually been in horrible conditions think looks like a summer camp. So, yeah, way to show your white privilege, Hassan.
I have some final thoughts.
Tommy, who was notoriously silent in the aftermath of the Nia Wilson death, got really excited to cover the death of this white girl who died in the hands of a brown illegal immigrant. You were in such a hurry, Tommy, to cover this ongoing story right after it was revealed that the suspect was undocumented that you didn't even take that ugly-ass fedora off to go off, Queen.
That's right.
Ugly fedora, have you seen your shirt and your chain? Have you seen yourself?
Yet another young person has been murdered by an illegal immigrant.
Like, this is it. This is what gets to
Look at what you're wearing. What is that, Wolverine? You're wearing a button-up shirt with a comic book character on it, and you want to talk about Tommy's hat? She looks like she's about to go out somewhere sunny on a beach or something, and you look like the douchiest man-child, monkey man-child imaginable.
Not allow this tragedy to be exploited to indict all immigrants. Follow the example of Molly.
Not all. What? Where are we? Not all. 8
family members who have already started bravely retaliating against these dead-eyed sociopathic freaks like Candace Owens, who got her comeuppance earlier yesterday.
This time a 24-year-old illegal immigrant from Mexico who's been living in the area illegally for 4 to 7 years. Maybe one of Nancy Pelosi's dreamers, huh?
First of all, the guy worked for a Republican. Secondly, he's not a dreamer. The requirements for DACA are incredibly rigid. You had to come to this country as a minor, along with a clean track record. Why would you throw 800,000 fellow U.S. citizens under the bus for a crime committed by an unrelated person? Well,
not all.
Because this isn't about arriving at the truth or justice. For you, it's certainly not about the facts. It's just about tapping into the primal fears of your fan base so they'll go out and vote Republican.
Projection. That is the Young Turks model. And I mean, this is, again, why it's easiest for people to arrive at these assumptions, because in the back of their heads, they know this is what they're doing. The last video I just showed, that's all he's doing. He's trying to tap into the anti-white, anti-Western, fuck America, fuck white people resentment to stir fear in these people. She's not making a not all argument. Or, I mean, You're
not outraged, you're not paying attention. Maybe you're one of the liberal types who spend the next 2 weeks defending this illegal immigrant murderer.
Which liberal types are defending murder? Name one. I'll wait.
It's already begun. These liberals are going out of their way to distract or completely ignore the fact the killer isn't illegal.
Why does it matter whether he was illegal or not?
Because he's a criminal in the first place, being here illegally, is, again, breaking the law, so then he's going to, like, it's like, it's you know, you can sort of make the assumption where if someone is going to disregard the laws about coming into the country, why would they then follow all of the subsequent laws that the country has? Again, basic logic. You don't need to be educated to come to that conclusion. But if you're not going to have any regard for the law of the land, why would you then expect them to have regard for the law of the land? Right? So that's why it matters. And he's like, the point she's making, these liberal types that will go out of their way to defend, what is he doing? Tommy Lawrence shamelessly exploits the death of Molly Tibbetts while ignoring Nia Wilson. He's already trying to muddy the waters and downplay the one and say, but what about this? What about
the murderer? Why do you try to actively blame an entire group of people who had nothing to do with this crime at all?
She didn't. Not all. She just said maybe, she even said maybe he was one of Nancy Pelosi's streamers. Maybe he was one of, not blaming
I didn't hear
all.
any of you Fox News types screeching about sending all white people to jail when that white supremacist psychopath executed Nia Wilson, a young black girl in Oakland last month. I didn't see Waldo.
What does that have to do with anything? What is that? What is it? Virtue signal at any point? That's all he's doing. He is exploiting Molly Tibbetts' death to virtue signal over Nia Wilson and to say, fuck white people. White people are racist.
Wall coverage of that, and I certainly didn't blame all white people.
They're already pulling out all the examples of white American men who have committed horrific crimes. Well, hold up. Illegal immigration isn't a race, it's an activity. So trying to point out all the white people who have murdered doesn't make your case.
Nobody tell Tommy that natural-born Americans commit crimes, and especially murders, at way higher rates than legal and illegal immigrants.
Well, again, obvious. This would be like, you know, in Italy, Italians are the majority of Italians that steal or ride bicycles or, you know, masturbate into their socks. Like anything, really. Oh my god, who does this appeal to? And you know, the thing is I feel like at one point I could bear watching the Young Turks, and there would be something there that I could say, okay, I see where they're coming from. But it has just gone so over the top, and I think they've all been around each other, circle jerking each other for so long that they just demonizing and disregarding everyone else, that the content has got unbearable. Like, it is just fueled by hatred and anger and resentment, and there's no light at the end of their tunnel, I feel like it's really ridiculous. And yeah, illegal immigrants probably do less crimes in general because they're already here illegally. So you probably want to keep a low profile. Just saying, I would. I mean, it's really ridiculous. Like, this guy is acting as if someone somewhere would think that in America, non-Americans would be the majority of whatever.
She's only exploiting this tragic death for racial agitation. All the hysteria surrounding criminal activity and immigrants is, simply put, Republican propaganda.
And furthermore, yeah, we have American citizens who murder, that's true. That's why we don't need to deal with it from people who have no legal right to be here in the first place.
Well, Tommy, your ancestors were illegal immigrants, and since illegal immigration isn't a race but an activity, they...
No. Her family immigrated here legally. I'm pretty sure that came out.
They have no right to be here in the first place either. As a matter of fact, America was built by people who had no right to be here. This is such a stupid conversation.
Illegal immigration, weak borders, and weak border enforcement kill Americans, period.
It's like saying fireworks kill Americans, falling out of bed kills Americans, everything kills Americans. This immigration argument is simply a matter of what you choose to spend your time on and what political purpose is guiding your rhetoric. And for you, it's the...
I feel like, again, just pointing to the title of this video and taking his words and saying, this video is what you choose to spend your time on, what your rhetoric is based around. Yes, Hassan! Yes! Hassan, look in the mirror once in a while.
Negative and deeply damaging portrayal of immigrants.
Yeah, but you are completely fine with your negative and deeply damaging portrayal of America, white people, the history of, and everything subsequent to that.
Especially brown ones. Since the 80s, immigration
Save the blacks.
109%, while all kinds of crime have dropped. There's 100+ years of empirical evidence from over thousands of studies proving conclusively that immigrants, both documented and undocumented, commit crimes at way lower rates. So what Tommy is spewing here is just xenophobia. It's good old-fashioned American racism. It's not exactly new either. It's the same exact kind of thinking that indicted all black people for the crimes of a few. I'm Hassan Piker, and if this angers you, please share this video with your friends. And
who are you making that not all argument? Is that just an assertion that you think you can make, that there's someone out there that must think that? Anyway, let's see. There was a clip of with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that I wanted to find. Corporate media attacks the left. TYT defends. Maybe this is it.
So CNN, Politico, and a lot of other organizations covered the Tuesday elections, some more fairly than others. And in Tuesday's elections for progressives, there were some excellent wins, there were some disheartening losses, and it was a mixed bag. And if you reported that way, that is true. So I'm going to give you the full context here. First, let's go to CNN's reporting. They say Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's movement failed
let's check
to
this
deliver.
out, because I'm pretty sure that's Ali who did
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been getting a lot of press lately. She is the congressional candidate who won the primary against an establishment Democrat in the state of New York, and she ran a very bold Democratic Socialist campaign. Now, the smears have begun from those on the right wing and some people on the left as well, which we've talked about in the past. But recently I was on HLN debating someone from the right wing, a conservative by the name of Ali Stuckey. She's the host of something known as the Conservative Review. And she made a lot of errors in describing what democratic socialism is. So first, for anyone who might not know what it is, I was asked what democratic socialism is, and I answer in this next video, so take a look.
So Anna, some might say that means free stuff for everyone.
Well, that's the way that individuals want to defame democratic socialists, as if everyone's looking for a handout. But in reality, what we're looking for, and I do also identify as a democratic socialist, is equality of opportunity and also a guarantee of what we believe are fundamental rights for human beings, including complete coverage of health care, education, you know, the basics to survive. No one's looking for the...
Education is not a basic to survive. Education is a privilege. And this is also the funny thing of these people who are so concerned about the privileged class and everything like that. They essentially want to give privileges to everyone. Healthcare is a privilege. You don't have a right to healthcare, because then who is going to force the doctors to perform these services? It is about handouts and freebies, and then she just spouts off euphemisms and rhetoric.
Government to make our sneakers. We're not looking to overthrow a capitalistic system, but we are looking to reform it, because right now the majority of the wealth, the majority of the income is really focused and targeted toward the top 1%. Everyone else is suffering.
Which is completely natural, as Jordan Peterson does a good job pointing out. You know, it's the Pareto distribution. There are thousands of or millions of musicians out there, but you turn on the radio and you only hear the top 1% of musicians. There are, you know, even at the restaurant I worked at, I was talking to my boss about this because I had just researched the Pareto distribution thing. And even at the restaurant, the idea of the 80-20 split, we have it where 80% of our business comes from 20% of our customers. Like, there's a good 20% of customers that come in every day or every other day, and 80% of our business comes from those core customers that are loyal and come to us every day. And then there might be, you know, parents in town. Like right now, college is coming back, so there's a lot of parents in town, people checking out the school, and those people, they're it's like tourists. They're in today and gone tomorrow, so they're not giving us 80% of our business. They're just kind of a one-off thing. But this whole congregation of power, whether it doesn't matter which area it's in, at the 1%, is completely natural. It's a natural phenomenon.
Including the middle class, which continues to shrink under the Trump administration.
That's nearly a perfect answer. Okay, you're kind of awesome. So I want everybody to understand, because further context, now that we're not on TV and we could have more time to talk, right, is that, first of all, the whole thing's a misnomer, because all sides use the word socialism without ever defining it. And the
well, no, see, all sides use the term socialism, and everyone's pretty knows what the definition is. You just have a group of people that you are a part of who would like to redefine it, and who would like to say, you know, oh, well, our form of socialism isn't going to be the same as any other socialism in the past. It makes you wonder why they just don't come up with a new term. Like, it's like a branding problem. Why don't they just come up with something else to call their movement. Like, but I mean, again, we're talking about a group that called themselves the Young Turks. Like, it really makes you wonder, like, whether they are actually like bloodthirsty killers on the inside that want to destroy, and like the Young Turks, and then you champion socialism. Like, at what point does someone not say, guys, I think we have an issue here?
The reality is that almost all the Western countries live in a mixed economy. So there's only questions around the edges, and most of those are settled for almost all the countries except us. So what do I mean by that? So are there things that the public sector does in every country, including America? Of course there are. There are cops, there's the military, there's firefighters, and so many other things that the...
See, and here's the other thing that they do, is they constantly conflate, and this is why you shouldn't, if anyone is ever trying to sell you on socialism and then they go to cops and firefighters, those are what's called local municipalities. They're handled by the local government. So when someone tries to conflate cops and police and firefighters and even, you know, local school systems, even though there's the Federal Department of Education and all that, but these are all things from the local pot, and then they try to conflate that with federal health care, federal welfare, federal, you know, college, and all these giant plans that they want for the entire country, and saying, well, we should be able to do this because you have cops locally. And it's two completely different things.
Government does. So it's not like private capital does everything. Now, in the rest of the developed world, the government also provides healthcare. So that's part of equality of opportunity that Anna was referring to.
Yes, but their healthcare systems aren't as good as ours. And notice how America is the one that leads the way in medical advancements. That's the thing, that's the trade-off. See, there are trade-offs with things where we incentivize, if someone finds a cure for cancer in America, they will be handsomely rewarded for doing so. See, the joy of capitalism is you get paid for solving other people's problems. I said this at my one job to someone who's a, you know, Chomskyite and, you know, probably listens to the Young Turks and all that. And when I said that to them, they were appalled that capitalism is about being rewarded for solving people's problems, because they look at it as strictly exploitive. And I said, well, what about a restaurant? You're there providing food to people who are hungry and willing to pay for you to cook for them. You provide a service to people who want it. You're a problem solver. And then I said, and what about the iPhone? They said, well, people don't need cell phones. Well, I'm pretty sure the people that buy them need them, and if people want them and are buying them, then what is the issue? Who's being exploited by this? No one.
Because if you're dead, you don't have any opportunity. So most civilized countries say we should have at least a bare minimum standard for healthcare for our citizens.
And we do.
We don't.
No, we do. Like, if you go to an emergency room, you will not get turned away over having insurance or not. We do have that.
More vicious, but we still live in a mixed economy, okay? And in Europe, they don't have the government make furniture. There's I don't know if you've heard of a store called IKEA. Okay, that's in a very socialist country in Sweden, and the government doesn't make meatballs, and they don't make.
Don't you? Yes. Like, it's like Anna's getting wet at the idea of socialism.
Furniture. It's a.
Isn't it amazing though to think that, like, if they were around during the rise of Hitler, like, these guys would be there. They would be the SS. They really would. Because what would he be saying? Socialized healthcare, socialize this. The Jews are the 1% we need to take from them. Like, the narrative surrounding everything the Young Turks believe are the narratives that Hitler was weaving. And again, hindsight's 2020. The context is very different. But when it was spoon-fed out bit by bit by bit by bit by bit, and then slowly going, these guys would have been right there, marching along. They would have loved it.
So what democratic socialists are saying in this country is we should also do healthcare like the rest of the Western world, the rest of the civilized world, and not just the West, but Japan and all these other countries that have had great success and have much better healthcare for their citizens at a lower cost. And the only other thing really that's a major factor is, do you do free college? And there's been great success with countries that have done free college. It actually stimulates the economy, it creates more jobs, etc. Now, so we're having this totally fake debate in the national media about, are you a socialist or are you not a socialist? Are you a socialist or a capitalist?
You know why? I mean, look.
Because 20 years ago, the idea of being a socialist was laughable. Like, not even 20 years ago. Let me put it to you like this. When Obama was running and people said he was a socialist, they tried to say that that was a racist dog whistle. That socialism was actually a smear term, and that you just actually didn't like him because he was black. So you were trying to brand him as a socialist because that term had such a bad connotation because of every sort of socialism that's ever manifested. And so it was unfathomable, the idea that he could have actually been a socialist. But now it's all good. It's all because it's democratic socialism. It's mob rule over who gets the freebies.
I think that there is a group of people who intentionally mislead the American people about what democratic socialism is. They try to paint this picture of Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, you know, doing a violent revolution and murdering people.
Oh, socialism.
And basically having the government control everything with absolutely no private sector.
Oh, socialism.
That is not what democratic socialists want, okay? Let's make that absolutely clear. And then there are the honest...
But it just makes me wonder, like, what if after you give everyone health care and education, but then there aren't enough jobs, and then you decide that everyone should get it? Alexandria Cortez, this is part of her thing, that jobs should be guaranteed. Well, if you're going to guarantee jobs, well, then you better take over all of those industries. That's on her checklist, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that she thinks there should be guaranteed jobs. So you will have the government making furniture and everything like that. Or you'll have them digging ditches just to have them filled back in. I mean, because that's a job. I mean, it doesn't need to be done, but...
idiots who fall for that propaganda. And unfortunately, I had to push back against that propaganda in this entire segment that, you know, I was participating in. Now, I'm really happy that we at least had that conversation.
It's ridiculous, though, for them to... It's like, if you're continually having to push back on things and continually having to correct people and continually having to tell them that they don't understand what the words mean, at some point you should think that maybe everyone else is right and you're the one that's wrong. Just saying.
Hopefully it informs some people, but I do want to go to the next video because it'll give you a sense of how much that propaganda has managed to seep into the minds of so many Americans. Take a look.
First of all, the Democratic Party has moved much further to the left since 1990. That's not an opinion. You can look at Pew Research on virtually every single issue since 1990. The entirety of the Democratic Party has moved to the left, whereas Republicans have stayed about the same. So it's just not true to say that this is some kind of reform going back to the original purpose of the Democratic Party. The fact of the matter is that they're putting socialist candidates out there, and socialism has not worked. You can tell me democratic socialism is different. It's not true. It's just socialism that you choose. It is not possible to maintain a capitalist society in which the government takes over the means of production. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked in the past. It doesn't work now. There are hundreds of millions of dead and buried people that can attest to the danger of socialism and communism.
You are confusing socialism with something. No, you are confusing democratic socialism with socialism. No one is looking to
You are confusing democratic socialism with socialism. I wonder why that could be. Like, why on earth could that be? Someone make that have such a confusion over that?
Throw a capitalistic system. I believe in capitalism, but what we have right now is crony capitalism. And the American people in general, that includes Republicans, are sick and tired of it. If you look at the approval rating for Donald Trump's massive tax cuts for corporations, even among Republicans, the approval rating has dropped considerably because people have noticed, all these tax cuts are only benefiting the top 1%, not the American people. Wages remain stagnant. And by the way, a federal judge that was appointed by Bush, just struck down the zero tolerance policy under the Trump administration, indicating that yes, the right wing has moved further to the right.
No, see, you know, I was talking to a friend about this earlier, how I said, you know, when I first heard about the New World Order and the idea of there being no countries but a global citizenry and, you know, just a global government overrunning everything and no borders and all that stuff, it was put out by Bush, who had mentioned the New World Order and everything like that. And I really thought it was going to be a neocon Republican ushering in of it, which is why I voted for Obama, because I thought, you know, that the Democrats and liberals were in opposition to that. Little did I know that the two parties, and this is, you know, I'm sure now everyone, you know, like John McCain's died, and John McCain is every Democrat's favorite Republican because he's a Republican in registry and label only. He's actually a neocon globalist, the same as Obama or Bush or Clinton or any of the, it's the uniparty that Donald Trump isn't a part of. So it's so funny for these people to try to bring forth old Republican neocon globalist and try to act as if they're doing the right thing, because what you have is you have these liberals ushering in, or trying to usher in, George Bush's New World Order global government vision of no borders and everything like that. And I never would have thought that that's what was going to happen, that Bush would lay out this New World Order and then the liberals would be the ones to usher in George Bush's dream.
So, look, this is what they do. They go on TV, and unless there's someone like Anna who's going to fight back and not let her steamroll them, they just go, oh, socialism means you take over all means of production. That's what democratic socialism means. That's not true, not remotely true. Okay, and it means millions of dead people.
Just the means of production that you choose to vote on. And, you know, in some of these countries, for example, there is, they, like in Iceland, they abort babies that could have Down syndrome and stuff like that. That sort of seems a little ableist, you know, but they have this healthcare system, and that those people were going to be the biggest wane on the system. That's how Hitler, we all hear that Hitler got rid of the disabled and the sick and everything like that. Well, what's the easiest way to do that? Just cut off their health care. When you can control someone's health care and what they have access to, you can control whether they live or die. And that's why it's very easy for them to have these genocides. That's how legally Hitler was able to do the operations and the experiments and all of that in the camps, is because he was controlling their health care. It was all done legally. Legally.
Okay, first of all, again, all these words, everybody puts different meaning on them, okay? So
no, just you.
I guess she's referring to communism, and okay, so Stalin takes over communism, and I don't believe in communism at all, and he takes it over, and then there's millions of dead people. Well, right next door was Hitler, who did fascism, which is a combination of the corporate world with the government, and millions of dead people.
But Nazi stands for National Socialist. How is National Socialism different from Democratic Socialism? How about that, Cenk?
So two can play at this game. So let's talk about what we're actually for, the policy positions today, not your fantasies. So the policy positions are the ones we just outlined. And her, every one of her claims was wrong. Every single one. Democratic Party has moved way to the left since the 1990s.
Yes.
Look at the polls, those are facts. No, wait a minute. If you're talking about the polling of the American people, yes, the polling shows not just Democratic voters, almost all the voters have moved to the left. Now, the politicians don't listen to them, but the voters have moved to the left.
Yeah, but their education has actually been getting worse, so I would kind of bet that that's a factor in that. Like, the whole reason they were moving to the left is because they're getting dumber.
They say, yeah, I do want Medicare for all.
Yes.
That's 60%.
Yes.
Yes, I do want to legalize marijuana. Yes, I do want a higher minimum wage. No, I do not want to let the banks take all those risks and run roughshod over us. And it goes on and on. But are Democratic politicians moving to the left? No, until Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they were massively moving to the right. They were pro-corporate because they take corporate donations. To complain that they're leftists or socialists is preposterous.
She had mentioned Cory Booker in this exchange. We can't show you the full video because it's like 11 minutes long, but she described him as like far left, a radical lefty.
Cory Booker, far left.
come on, girl.
Hilarious.
Like, you better come correct. Like, do your research if you're going to make these types of claims. Like, and that's the thing. I've been on this show several times. I love doing the show. It at least gives me an opportunity to get progressive ideas out there in the mainstream media, right? But I always try to be respectful because I don't like cross-talking. I don't like talking over people. But what did I tell you guys? I'm done being nice. I'm done being Mrs. Nice Woman or whatever. You know, like, I want to fight back. We can't keep letting them run with their narrative and control the messaging out there, because that's what's happening time and time again. People literally think that we want the government to take over everything. I can tell you this.
You do. Like I said, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wants government jobs guaranteed to everyone, so you'd have to take over everything to do that. And it's not even that maybe you don't want to take over everything, because there's some petty things that could be left, like, you know, dry cleaners and stuff like that. You just want to take over all the important institutions. And that's the whole thing, you know, the idea that the left deals with things institutionally. They want complete control over education, complete control over healthcare, and, you know, anything else that is a major institution. I feel like there's another point I was going to say, but... And the other thing is, again, you're trying to rebrand socialism. This is an uphill battle. This is why you're having to fight so hard, Anna, because you just can't come out and say, my socialism will be different than every other socialism ever, and you should just take my guarantee at face value.
I do not want the government making the clothes I wear, okay? I don't want the government deciding what car I drive. I don't want the government doing any of that.
But they will when they come out and they decide that, you know, carbon emissions are too high and we now need to mandate that everyone gets an electric car for the sake of global warming and everything like that. So, yeah, you do.
But what I do want is to ensure that Americans have the bare necessities to survive. And by the way, you know, she talks about how America is the #1 country in the world, right? We're #1. I have the stats to prove that that is not the case. But
not the case.
So I just want to say two things. One, look, unlike that person, we actually do study the facts and talk about it on the show. So when we say Cory Booker's nowhere near a leftist, there's a reason why we say that. For example, in 2012, when Obama was running against Mitt Romney and Obama criticized, I mean, he just lightly tweaked Wall Street. Cory Booker rushed onto TV and defended Mitt Romney and Wall Street. And that's supposed to be the leftist Democrat. And he's like, well, I think it is really unfair to talk about the people in the financial industry that way. And I really wish Obama wouldn't do that. Why? Because they're his donors. So that's why a lot of progressives don't trust Cory Booker. To claim that he's some sort of wild-eyed leftist is hilarious and shows you've done no research whatsoever.
Right.
And look, people
So because he defended one remark, it's therefore his policies are irrelevant? Like, come on, Chang.
Legitimate debates about how much worker control should there be over companies. For example, a really interesting model is in Germany, where they have their boards are half labor and half the investors and management, right? Well, guess what? Germany has an incredibly stable economy that is really successful. I don't even know if I'm in favor of that. But I think that's an interesting, intelligent conversation to have instead of, oh, you're going to kill millions of people. That's what socialism is for. I mean,
again, we're watching the Young Turks. These two who can't even agree on if there was an Armenian genocide or not.
What a bunch of simpletons.
Okay, so let's go to the next video, because this was my personal favorite. Take a look.
Do we want to start paying, you know, close to 100% in income taxes like Scandinavia, countries that Bernie Sanders has said that he has actually loved and wants to model our country after? And I just don't think so. So I think
the other. Unbelievable.
Okay.
No one is asking for 100% taxation. You are painting a completely false narrative or picture of what those on the left are asking for. No one is asking for 100% taxation.
I would love to hear the rosy picture of socialism. If you can point to any country that has embraced socialism fully. I'm not assuming things. You can look at Scandinavia. You can look at the countries who have actually embraced socialism. They don't do well.
So,
okay, yeah, sorry.
I know, but I have the data. I really want to get to the data really quickly before. Okay, first of all, no one is asking for 100% taxation.
Just
I said that
like
in that
70,
clip,
80.
and I'm saying it again. Bernie Sanders never said he wanted to tax people at 100%.
It's preposterous.
It's ridiculous.
It's the most insane thing you've ever heard. They say insane things, and then when you say that's not true, they're like, well, wait, why are you being uncivil? I was just saying that Democrats for 100% taxes. I mean, think about how monstrously stupid that is.
Yeah.
Okay, and she just says it with a straight face.
So let's get to Scandinavian countries, because she talks about how, oh my, he wants us to be like the Scandinavian countries. They're so terrible, except they're not. They're actually much better than us when you look at various issues. Like, so first, let's start with life expectancy, because that's important, right?
Yeah.
Do Americans live longer lives than those people who are living in those horrible Scandinavian countries?
Of course, we're number one.
Except we're not. If you compare us to Scandinavian countries, we're last. Sweden, life expectancy, and by the way, this is based on the World Health Organization.
You gotta love how it's like a difference of
average life expectancy
2
is
years.
82.4 years. Norway, 81.8 years. Finland, 81.1 years. Denmark, 80.6 years. And in the United States, 79.3 years. Okay, great. Rates for high school or secondary
Sorry,
education.
I hit the pause on the wrong thing. And notice how that was only a difference of like 2 years. And here's the other thing that, you know, people have pointed out about these countries they point to. And I mean, I'm just going to say is like, let's say you have a race of people that has certain genetic predispositions to things like diabetes or heart disease or different health problems. Like, you know, black people will have issues with diabetes, heart disease, and stuff from dietary things that have then been passed down and everything like that. Well, maybe that's what's dragging us down to that two-year difference in life expectancy, or, you know, various other things. Again, they're taking these homogenous white countries, these solely white nations that aren't multicultural in any which way, and comparing it to the U.S. and not factoring any of this other things in, that we are a different country demographically, culturally, and everything like that, and then just thinking that these differences are solely chalked up to the government and what the government can provide. And the other thing I hate is that they don't realize, you know, they shit talk corporations. Well, what's a corporation? Corporation is just a group of people operating under a name, a corporate entity. What's the government? The government's just a group of people operating under a governmental entity and title. So why do they think, if they put all of this power into the government or into controlling these resources, that the government won't turn as corrupt as it is? Like, again, you're complaining about the government and crony capitalism and then having too much power and wealth, and then your answer to that is to funnel more power and wealth into the government that you're claiming is corrupt? Like, how does throwing more money into a corrupt system benefit anyone?
Is number one, which is unsurprising because they have awesome education there, 99%. Denmark, 92%. Norway, 87%. United States, all the way down there at 83%. Now, Sweden doesn't do as well as we do, but I mean, if you compare us to other Scandinavian countries, we're not number one. We're not the best.
Can I, just one quick note on Finland. They do not allow for...
Again, I would wonder if you take this secondary education graduation rate and looked at the demographics of what races aren't graduating, how it would even out, and just balance that against the nationalities that comprise those stats. Because there's certain cultures in America that don't value education as much as those monocultures in those Scandinavian countries.
Private schools. And in America, that's an anathema, okay? They're like,
That's
no!
terrible!
Oh, those socialists, you have to privatize all the schools. They'll never have any success. 99% graduation rate. Not only that, they test the very best out of all the countries in the world in almost every category. It turns out public schools work. Oh, socialism.
Okay.
Those public schools are what made this country great.
So let's look at poverty rates. Okay.
Now let's just say you had a centralized government force controlling education and what gets put into the classes, and then you have a corrupt system come into that system because it's democratic, we're going to be electing people for this, and then let's say that someone wants to insert revisionist or false histories into that education. Could that be a easy way to really fuck over a generation? Yeah. I mean, these people think nothing of consolidation and centralization of power. They really don't.
So when it comes to poverty, only 5.5% of the population is living under the poverty line in Denmark. In Finland, it's 6.3%. In Norway, 8.1%. Sweden, 9%. And then would you look at that? The United States, 16.8%.
Wow. I wonder what the population rates are for these places when you look at numbers like this. Again, you can put these stats out there, and then, but again, their whole presumption under this is that government is capable of fixing this, that the government can stop these things from that. They just basically want full-blown social engineering. They think these societies can be engineered to perfection, and it's like, what are the population rates for these places? Obviously, if you need to have a certain sort of equilibrium. If we don't have enough jobs, why are we continually taking in more people and hearing how immigration is so great? These places have very, very, very strict immigration. They don't let anyone in, and that's how they can keep these rates, because there's a certain amount of jobs to working people ratio.
We rank 34th out of 36 countries. I mean, in terms of yes.
But women like that, they don't care. They're like, oh, that's poor people. I told you, I don't care about poor people. If they're suffering, so what? I don't want to live in a Scandinavian country where we actually care about other human beings. Well, that's okay.
Look at that straw man. I mean, they think it's just a matter of, they just don't care enough. I mean, this is the dehumanizing of the opposition that these guys engage in daily. They are the brown shirts. How the Germans portray Jews as heartless rats that are just out for money and greed. That's how they portray anyone who isn't a progressive.
You know, one last thing that I loved about your appearance there is that I know the Republican strategy, and they tell their people that go on TV this: filibuster, because those TV segments are really short. So talk for as long as you possibly can so that Jeff Weaver gets less time, who's Bernie Sanders' campaign manager, that was also on that. Anna Kasparian, they probably didn't even take you into account, which was a mistake. Okay, so that's why it's important for people on the left to be strong and say, no, we're not going to let you get away of saying things that are provably wrong, and by the way, hilarious. If you did 100% taxes, you would literally have no money. And we're not going to let you get away with filibusters. So that's what strength looks like. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below. Then you're a TYT.
Why would you need money, though, if the government's giving you housing, healthcare, food, and everything else? What would you need it for? Why can't they just give you an allowance for clothing? Anyway, we've reached an hour, so this will be the first installment of the Hour of Hate, TYT edition. I'm sure there'll be another one. This might be the best night ever for Justice Democrats. Is that the new term, or have they dropped the socialism and now it's Justice Democrats? Anyway, I'm going to upload this. Feel free to hit me up. Let me know which you would like to see me do next, and take care, everyone.